Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're talking about the two United States. So we're going to be breaking down the Republic versus the corporate United States, the Act of 1871 and dual state constitutions, and the 14th Amendment's role in shifting citizenship. So if you think the United States is one country, one government and one set of laws, you've already missed the trap, guys. Most people believe that they live in the United States of America, but there are two United Stateses. One is the Constitutional Republic, born in 1776, the one that you learned about in school. And the other is the corporate entity, which was incorporated in 1871. And we've already gone over the definitions on how it literally is defined as a federal corporation. But I also highly recommend that you read the Act of 1871, which introduced the District of Columbia. Definitely read that. So you have one that's the land and the other that is the business. And the one that you live under depends on the contracts that you signed starting at birth. So the Republic of the United States of America was formed under the Constitution of 1787, amended by the Bill of Rights. And in this system, the people are sovereign. The government is servant, and the rights come from the creator, not from Congress. So, this is the jurisdiction of the land, which is common law, where men and women are free unless they cause harm to others. So, then comes the Act of 1871, which is officially called an Act to Provide a Government for the District of Columbia. So, this is when Congress created the separate municipal government of the District of Columbia, but they did it as a corporation. So, it's quite a long act, but it's worth reading. I promise. Everything is worth reading. In that corporate United States, it operates underneath its own charter, its own bylaws, and its own jurisdiction, which is maritime and commercial law. It operates under commercial law, not the original written constitution. So that's why it's its own little 10 square miles. Again, like I've said in a previous episode, it's not a state. Okay. It governs not sovereign men and women, but legal persons or corporate franchises bearing the all caps name. So that act of 1871, it wasn't random. After the Civil War, the Republic was financially bankrupt. The federal government needed credit, and the international bankers were willing to provide it, but of course, there were stipulations and conditions. Here, the deal was reorganize the government as a corporation so that it could operate under commercial law and be held liable for its debts. So, this shift allowed the government to act as a private company, making contracts and taking loans and pledging assets without direct constitutional restrictions. So, the split created two parallel systems here. There's the original Constitution for the United States and the Constitution of the United States of America Incorporated. Okay, there's the two different things. So over time, each state adopted a second constitution, one for the people and one for the corporate entity. So you'll notice that your state has multiple constitutions. Sure, not a lot of people do that, but you can actually search it. You should search your own state's constitution, and a lot of them have multiple constitutions. So the corporate constitution, it often mirrors the original, but it operates under the rules of the municipal corporation, not the original republic. So when you see state of Idaho, state of Washington, state of New Mexico, in all caps, that's the corporate version. It is not the sovereign state. Your sovereign state is the republic, again, with its own constitution. So in corporate law, the president is not the owner. They are the officer hired to run the operations for the real owners. The President of the United States holds the same role. He sits as the CEO of the company. When you start recognizing that, everything starts to make sense. And just like any corporation, only stakeholders and franchise members vote for the CEO. So when you register to vote, you are registering as a franchise member of that corporation, giving you, I mean, it gives you a say who runs it, but no claim for ownership of the corporation itself. The republic's leader is supposed to be accountable to the people, but the corporation's president is accountable to its shareholders, and you're not one of them. That's how you know that we're not running under the republic right now. But it is a clear distinction on these two separate systems that are running right here. When you say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic, there are two separate systems here. So, who actually owns the United States corporation? When you follow the money, you're going to find that the corporation is not owned by we the people. It is controlled by its creditors. The District of Columbia operates as the corporate headquarters, but the creditors, the international banking families, are the ones that hold the lien. The Federal Reserve, established in 1913, became the corporation's central bank, issuing its currency as debt. So that debt is backed by collateral, and the primary collateral is the labor and property of its citizens, which is why birth certificates and social security numbers and taxation systems are critical to this corporate model. And we're going to get deeper into that in the next episode. But tying back to the president as the CEO, this is why the president operates as a corporate officer. He's managing the company on behalf of its credits and stakeholders, the creditors. His real job isn't to defend the Constitution. It's to ensure the corporation remains solvent and profitable. And when you vote, you're participating in a shareholder style election for the CEO of a business that you do not own. So, yeah, the real Civil War here. The history books say that the Civil War was fought to free the slaves. That's the story we've been told. I want to play this into context too, just like history books tell a story about World War II and did it happen? No, yes, but not the way it happened, just kind of like COVID. How the way that the history books are going to write that COVID happened isn't the way that COVID happened. 9/11, all of it. All of it. If you're with me, I hope I'm not losing people by saying these things, but I probably am. But if you're still with me, you're hearing what I'm saying. But the history books say that the Civil War was fought to free the slaves, but there was another motive. It was consolidating economic control under the federal government. So before the war, many of these southern states were trading directly with foreign nations, and they were completely bypassing the northern industry and federal tariffs. So this independence was a threat to the centralizers in Washington and to the banking interests funding the North. So to finance the war, Lincoln issued the first income tax, suspended habeas corpus, and printed greenbacks, which is a currency backed by the credit of the United States. These moves bound the federal government to creditors in a way that had never existed before. So by 1865, the United States was drowning in debt. And just 3 years later, in 1868, the 14th Amendment was ratified. Um, I'm going to make a side note that that's also to be contested because if you read the Congressional Act of 1962, it states that it was 2 states short of being ratified, so that's a whole other conversation in itself. But here we'll talk on the 14th Amendment within itself. And this amendment, what it did is it created a new political status, the citizen of the United States, which is a federal citizenship that overrode state citizenship. And here's the hidden truth is that this citizenship class was the legal mechanism to make the people themselves collateral for the war debt. The war created the debt, and then the 14th Amendment created the taxpayers. So before 1868, the primary citizenship in America was state citizenship. You were a citizen of your state first, and only secondarily an American of the Union of the 50 states, your sovereign state. Your rights came from the Constitution and from the land that you lived on, and not from the federal government. So now, after the Civil War, Congress passed the 14th Amendment in 1868, and Section 1 of the 14th Amendment says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. So this flipped the order. You notice that now federal citizenship was primary and state citizenship became secondary. So what's interesting is even on old uh, passport contracts, I want to say passport forms, when you fill out for the passport, it actually gave an option as state citizen or federal citizen. And now, they've taken that out. So, of course, you have to actively write that in within the contract and when you're doing it. But it's kind of interesting that there was a clear distinction and there still is a clear distinction. So, because a citizen of the United States in the corporate sense is subject to federal government. The moment you accept the status through the birth registration, through Social Security or certain different contracts, you agree to operate underneath the jurisdiction of United States Corporation. This is why court cases often refer to 14th Amendment citizens having privileges and immunities rather than unalienable rights. Again, not and unalienable rights. They are unalienable rights. Privileges are granted and they can be taken away. Rights in the Republic cannot. So the 14th Amendment also ties directly into the legal definition of the word person. Okay. So in corporate law, person can be a corporation, a trust, partnership. We've already gone over this, how it can be an individual acting in its commercial capacity, right? So making you a person under the jurisdiction of the United States, the corporation can now regulate you as property or as an employee. So the shift is not just political, it's financial. The federal corporate government now, after doing all of this, has a population that it can tax directly, draft for military service, and use as collateral for its debts. The Federal Reserve notes, which were introduced later in 1913, were backed not by gold and silver, but by the labor and productivity of its 14th Amendment citizens. So, which America are you in? When you use a social security number or a driver's license, a bank account in your all caps name, you're operating in the corporate United States jurisdiction. When you act as a man or a woman on the land outside of those contracts, you're operating in the Republic. So most people never realize that they even had a choice. The United States that you the United States that you pledge allegiance to might not be the United States that you think it is. So really, when you understand the difference between the republic and the corporation, you realize why the corporate government treats you like a number and not as a sovereign man or woman. The real question is will you keep serving as a franchise in the corporate system, or will you step back into the republic that you were born an heir to?